Wonderful to have you all here on Racial Justice Shabbat. We were treated to a wonderful talk last night from Jillian Harvey, and she'll be sharing again. And first I want to invite up Minwa Long, who's going to share with us a little bit with us about some of the wonderful work that our community has been able to do.
Shabbat Shalom. So on the behalf of the Racial Justice Education Committee, which organized this Racial Justice Shabbat, we wanted to formally recognize a couple of all the amazing social action and social justice committees that are present at Amuna. We recognize that the racial justice work is not just about racial justice, but it's really towards the goal of equity for all. So, the Racial Justice Education Committee organizes events and learning, promotes education for racial justice. So we hope to have more events throughout the rest of the year. The next organization or committee I'll highlight is the GBIO. This is the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. I think I saw Stephen over there. Okay, so the GBIO, they've done over the last couple years, their main effort has been in a housing justice campaign. They worked with elected representatives and delivered a significant increase in funding for public housing and legislation. And there's continued work, and I've been privileged to be involved in that group as well. Next, we have the LGBTQ+ Inclusion Committee. They are having their next event during Pride Shabbat, which will be coming at the end of May. And the next is the Reproductive Rights Committee. This has been a group to really advocate for women's rights and volunteering with local organizations. Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Yes, so the next event will be coming up pretty soon in February. There's been a lot of also work around refugee action, and I think the booklet here might have some outdated information, but recently there's been a big push to working with local supporting local refugee families. And so check your emails about that. And we also have the Disability and Inclusion Committee. This committee helps create community for people with special needs, and especially our youth. And we also have the Racial Justice Action Group, which they have been doing a lot of work in terms of social action and actually getting out there to work with different organizations, such as Second Chance Justice, Conquer Prison Outreach, and Temple Isaiah's Reparations Committee. And finally, we have the Anti-Semitism Initiative, which also hosts a number of different programs throughout the year. We hope that you will participate in this, in learning and also participating in the various events that Amuna has throughout the year.
And it's really based on the work of so many volunteers that we're able to do so much. I'm going to turn it over now to Judd Pierce, who has been one of the organizers of this wonderful Shabbat. Thank you, Judd.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I have the privilege and the honor to introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Jillian Harvey. As we were saying last night at the event, the United Nations proclaimed January 24th a day of education, and I think how appropriate that we're here to talk and learn together. One of the things I was reading as the service was going on was on page 162. Shalom Noah Berzovsky said this, "We join in community not of people striving with or against one another, but of people finding each other. In giving up striving, we can move away from self-judgment, no longer bound by an accounting of failure or assertion of power. We can simply be, enjoy, be with. On Shabbat, our souls can remember how to be open." I first met our speaker in Arlington when she was teaching all of us in the community about issues surrounding equity. Jillian Harvey has spent years building more equitable communities and creating a more welcoming Commonwealth. On November 12th of last year, she became the Massachusetts Municipal Association's first Chief Equity Officer. The MMA created the position to advance the organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Jill works internally with the MMA staff and provides external support to municipalities around the state. In fact, this is a very big weekend for the organization, their annual Connect 351 annual meeting and conference in the Seaport. So Jillian has literally been going back and forth over the last 24 hours to and from Boston. So a special thank you for taking the time with us during such a busy weekend for you and the Commonwealth. She's a Framingham native, so she's local. She's one of us. She earned an anthropology degree from UMass and worked for several years as a youth leader and art specialist for the Brookline Teen Center and as a senior patient experience representative for the Autism Spectrum Center at Boston Children's Hospital. And she has her master's degree in studies at public affairs at Brown University, and while in graduate school, she helped the program integrate DEI best practices, starting with student orientation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Jillian Harvey.
I'm gonna just grab my water. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. So the theme of this Racial Justice Shabbat is the path forward. And I first want to reflect on the last week. I think you've done that some already this morning, but I just believe it's so timely. It's truly been, for me, a difficult week to grapple with the next chapter that our country is embarking on with the new administration based on the slew of executive orders that were signed on day one, on Monday. I know that there will be more to come of that. Laws that are happening are stripping individuals of their dignity, identity, and rights. And for me, it's almost unfathomable that, you need both? Okay. It's unfathomable to believe that this is 2025 and not 1925. Fear, anxiety, loss of hope are all feelings that I have been trying to suppress, but I know I need to accept them and use them to fuel me to keep pushing forward. Last Friday, January 17th, I had the honor of participating in a unity gathering at Boston Common at the Embrace Sculpture, and that was in collaboration with the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, Embrace Boston, and the NAACP branch that I'm president of, which covers Mystic Valley. This gathering was a speak out and a call to action for us as a people to make a decision about what our path forward is. I think we all know on Monday of this week, two very important events took place, one being the transition of our federal government to a returning administration, and the other being the national and worldwide celebration and observance of the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So the unity gathering we held last week was an opportunity to speak out before these two happenings were ironically coinciding on the 20th. The theme and title of last Friday was, "Where do we go from here? Choosing community over chaos." It was an ode to Dr. King's final book before his assassination. His book was, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?" And Dr. King's words encourage us to explore the path forward and recognize that the path is choosing community. In chapter 1 of that book, he talks about the frustration of challenges and setbacks to progress. And he notes that our people are failing to appreciate two important facts. And I want to share those two facts with you. So the first one is that the line of progress is never straight. For a period of movement may follow a straight line, and then it encounters obstacles and the path bends. He then says, "We are encountering just such an experience today. The inevitable counter-revolution that succeeds every period of progress is taking place. Failing to understand this as a normal process of development, folks will fail into unjustified pessimism and despair." The second fact that King states is, "A final victory is an accumulation of many short-term encounters." He wrote those words in 1967. And yet they resonate so mightily with what we are experiencing today. When we think about the path forward, we need to think about this cyclical process of progress. We are in the midst of a counter-revolution to the progress we have made in this country in advancing human and civil rights. While we still have a long way to go, we are moving through that cycle. And it's going to be a rough journey at times, but we must have faith and uplift one another when that pessimism and despair sets in, because these few steps backwards are preparing us for a full launch forward. And we can only do that together, as one community. Otherwise, we will have chosen chaos. So what does choosing community mean, though? What does it look like in actuality? I believe that choosing community means doing what is necessary to ensure that every individual, despite their race, sex, gender identity, religion, socioeconomic status, ability, and every other differing characteristic, that every individual has what they need to thrive. Acknowledging that certain groups of people and communities do not have what they need to thrive, and it's not necessarily by their choosing, nor is it by accident, but a byproduct of the racist and faulty structures and systems that we are still upholding today. I say faulty systems rather than broken, because the systems and structures that govern our lives are working perfectly as intended for some folks, and they're not working for others, but this has been by design. Choosing community means choosing to prioritize equity, which requires a commitment to understanding that the structures and systems we currently have perpetuate disparities in every facet of life. Changing these systems is a must, and change is hard. Change evokes fear in folks, particularly a fear of losing something. That if a group of people is now getting resources to help them catch up, that in some way that will take away from those who are already so far ahead. That's not the case. I believe the fear of losing power and privilege, although folks don't want to admit it, is especially hard when they are losing that power to a group of people that they believe are different or lesser than or less deserving. And this sentiment is at the core of racism. And the roots of racism run so deeply in America that our entire country was built upon the backs of an oppressed people. And many people are still oppressed. Anthropologist Ruth Benedict wrote in her 1940 book, Race, Science, and Politics, that racism is defined as the dogma that one ethnic group is condemned nature to heredity inferiority, and another group is destined to heredity superiority. It is the dogma that the hope of civilization depends on eliminating some races and keeping others pure, a dogma that one race has carried progress throughout human history and alone can assure the progress of the future. In the 1940s, Ruth Benedict was voicing anti-racist beliefs that refuted the theories of racial superiority. The ideological justification of white superiority was embedded into every aspect of American life. In 1787, dehumanization of a people was penned into law purely for transactional purposes, with the 3/5 compromise. That's when it was signed. This agreement noted that enslaved people would be counted as 3/5 of a person, impacting taxation and representation in the House of Representatives and Electoral College, essentially giving slave states more political power. That dehumanization still exists today, just not as starkly. Director of Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley, John A. Powell defines othering as a practice that denies someone's humanity. He has said that othering can happen between individuals, or it can be institutionalized by governments, organizations, or other powerful groups. Othering persisted in America. It persisted after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which granted freedom to those who were enslaved. And then it continued to persist after the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868 that extended liberties and rights granted by the Bill of Rights to formerly enslaved people. Citizenship was granted to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people. But in 1896, the United States Supreme Court established the doctrine of separate but equal as the law of the land in the famous Plessy v. Ferguson case. Segregation was the moral and legal sanction by the highest court, and separate but equal has made for tragic inequality and injustice that is still felt today. Reconstruction, segregation, and Jim Crow laws normalized othering and the idea of racial superiority well into the 20th century. I wish I could leave that history of othering in the past, but I can't, because we've seen live action this week alone from our federal administration, othering at its finest. The calls for deportations and the characterization and criminalization of immigrants who call America home is dehumanizing. Members of the LGBTQIA+ community are being denied their humanity and rights to identify and express themselves freely. Othering is used as a weapon and is used to divide and foster a sense of superiority via exclusion for particular groups of individuals. When we other, we opt for chaos. Instead, we must choose to focus on belonging. And Powell defines belonging as having a meaningful voice and the opportunity to participate in the design of political, social, and cultural constructs and structures that shape one's life. The right to both contribute and make demands upon society and political institutions. At its core, structural belonging holds a radically inclusive vision because it requires mutual power, access, and opportunity among all groups and individuals within a shared container, and that container here being society. Belonging is creating a space of differing cultures and beliefs to be represented, heard, and valued. It's the ongoing culture created to have all people feel welcome across differences. It's our responsibility to embody belonging by building relationships, engaging in conversations even when they're difficult or uncomfortable, and sharing and inviting people into our physical spaces. Today, it is our duty to choose community. This will require us to step out of our comfort zones and engage in some self-reflection, which we'll dive into deeper this afternoon for those of you who will be sticking around. But in order for social equity and belonging to exist for all, we must allow ourselves to see one another as human and worthy of love, peace, and freedom. As a society, we tolerate iniquity and chronic mistreatment of one another, which must change. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. King noted that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We can no longer idly stand while suffering consumes our neighbors. The time to act is now. Starting with self-awareness and acknowledging the role we hold in perpetuating injustices is the first step. And when I say we, I mean all of us, myself included. Everyone is a part of the cycle. We each play a part in upholding oppressive systems, and understanding where we're situated is key. So learning about cultures and religions and people who are different from us is an essential step in choosing community. Learning can certainly be done through research, reading books, watching films, but real engagement and relationship building humanizes people and helps us to see that individuals have much more in common despite noted differences. I encourage each of you to make an effort to talk to your neighbors, get to know them, the people who live near you if you don't already. Often we find community in spaces like this, but there's also community right next to you at home. Strike up a conversation with a stranger in a coffee shop, grocery store, at a park, while you're waiting for the bus, if you take public transit, because you know you'll be waiting some time. But just engaging with other people makes such a difference. Human-to-human interaction goes a long way, and it often has a trickle effect. You don't know how simple a hello can positively impact someone's day. Joining in coalition with other groups and organizations with aligned and clear values and building a network of freedom fighters is at the tips of our fingers. We may have differing viewpoints, but if we still hold the same core values, you can find a way to work together. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I've seen over and over again small groups pop up and start this work from the ground, when in fact, lots of other organizations are doing really great work. And so I encourage folks to connect with organizations that are local. So organizations like the ACLU and the NAACP are always seeking volunteers and new members to be a part of the change. And each of those things I just mentioned is a step in the right direction of choosing community. So as I come to a close, I want to remind you that we are mightier together. And in her speech at the founding of the National Women's Political Caucus in Washington, D.C. on July 10th in 1971, Fannie Lou Hamer said, "Nobody's free until everybody's free." That is what choosing community means. That's not choosing chaos. I'm very much looking forward to going deeper into this topic this afternoon, and we'll explore some of our self-identities and how we continue in our racial justice journeys and how we can choose community. Thanks.
Gesture clap to Jillian.